Welcome back, everyone, to No Human Podcast, and today we're really going deep with this one. We're diving into Ben Horowitz's book, The Hard Thing About Hard Things.
Yeah.
Now, this isn't your typical kind of like polished CEO memoir. This is raw and real about what it actually takes to build a company. It's like you're right there in the trenches with him experiencing all the highs and lows.
It really is. And you know what I think makes this book so valuable is that Ben's willing to dissect his decision-making process, you know, the struggles he faced and the lessons he learned under pressure. I mean, it's just packed with insights, whether you're leading a team or just trying to figure out your own career path.
And you wouldn't believe where his story begins. I mean, talk about an unexpected place for a tech CEO, Berkeley, California.
Berkeley?
Yeah, tie-dye, protest the whole counterculture scene. Plus, get this, his grandparents were card-carrying communists.
Wow, that's a fascinating backdrop. It's an interesting juxtaposition, right? I mean, his upbringing in this politically charged intellectual environment definitely shaped his worldview. But then you have him joining the high school football team, excelling in advanced math classes. All these contrasting experiences probably contributed to his ability to see things from multiple angles. And that's such a crucial skill for anyone in a leadership position.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And speaking of seeing things from different angles, there's this story from his childhood about a red wagon and a bully. It perfectly illustrates how Ben tackles fear head on. He's dared to confront another kid.
Oh, wow.
And instead of getting beat up, he ends up making a lifelong friend.
That's awesome. It seems like that experience, along with his time on the football team, really instilled in him this resilience and a willingness to confront challenges head on, which clearly served him well later on in life.
For sure.
Yeah.
But his path to Silicon Valley wasn't exactly a straight shot. I mean, a near disastrous blind date actually became a major turning point for him.
A blind date?
Really? Yeah, it forced him to reevaluate his priorities, and he had this do everything at once mentality.
Yeah.
But this made him realize he needed to find a more stable career path, and that eventually led him to Netscape during the internet boom. Talk about being in the right place at the right time.
He went from working on fairly mundane networking products to being thrown into the heart of the browser wars with Microsoft.
Yeah.
It was trial by fire. Ben was tasked with developing Netscape's sweet spot, which was a direct response to Microsoft's aggressive tactics. And this experience gave him invaluable lessons in competition strategy, making high-stakes decisions under immense pressure.
And that pressure cooker environment is what eventually led him to co-found LoudCloud with Mark Andreessen, right?
That's right.
They were pioneers in cloud computing. I mean, they literally helped define what the cloud even means.
Yeah.
But they also launched right before the dot-com bubble burst.
Talk about bad timing.
I know, right?
Imagine trying to fundraise during a time when investors were throwing money at anything with a .com in its name.
Oh, yeah.
And then suddenly the whole market implodes. That's exactly what Ben and his team went through. They faced near bankruptcy, a brutal IPO process, and the crushing weight of a collapsing market. He describes it as one of the most difficult periods of his life.
And as if that wasn't enough, he also had a personal crisis during the IPO roadshow. His daughter had a serious medical emergency.
Oh, no.
It really highlights the immense pressure he was under trying to juggle this personal turmoil with professional turmoil. I can't even imagine.
It's a testament to his resilience and ability to compartmentalize.
Yeah.
He had to make some really tough choices, like layoffs, which he admits he struggled with initially.
Yeah.
He was overly optimistic early on, but learned that honesty, even when it's painful, is essential for building trust with your team.
And against all odds, they took LoudCloud public. But there were no champagne celebrations. It was more of a somber victory.
Right.
His CFO even said on the plane ride home, yeah, but we're still screwed.
Even with the IPO, LoudCloud's future was uncertain. They had to pivot. They transitioned from a cloud services company to Opsware, focusing on data center automation software, and that meant letting go of their original dream, essentially reinventing the company. Not an easy decision, but a crucial one.
They had to adapt to survive, and that meant building a killer sales team. Enter Mark Cranny, who had a completely different approach to sales than Ben. It was a gamble that ended up paying off big time.
Cranny brought a level of discipline and rigor to the sales organization. He focused on training process and instilled a culture of accountability, which were essential for Opsware's growth. He even had engineers and product managers go through sales training, emphasizing that everyone needed to understand how their roles contributed to winning deals.
And that brings us to one of my favorite stories from the book, The Acquisition of Tangram. A public company worth only $6 million. Sounds crazy. But they needed Tangram's technology to secure a massive contract with EDS, a deal that was make or break for Opsware.
It showcases Ben's willingness to make bold, unconventional moves. He recognized the strategic value of Tangram even though it was a small, struggling company. And the EDS deal itself was a nightmare. Technical challenges, cultural clashes, the whole 9 yards.
Wow.
But Ben didn't give up. He empowered his team to find solutions and went above and beyond to meet the client's needs.
He even had this idea of creating a Freaky Friday scenario where he swapped the heads of sales engineering and customer support to help them see things from each other's perspectives.
What?
It was an unorthodox approach to conflict resolution, but it actually worked.
That's amazing. It just goes to show you sometimes the most effective solutions are the ones you wouldn't expect.
Exactly. And it speaks to Ben's ability to think outside the box and create an environment where people could work through their differences and ultimately come together as a more cohesive team.
It does, and that's a perfect segue into the leadership principles that Ben developed through these experiences. Let's dive into those next. Now, these leadership principles aren't your typical, feel-good management platitudes, They're forged in the fires of real-world experience, sometimes even counterintuitive. Take, for instance, his stance on honesty with employees. He says he actually became a better CEO when he stopped being overly positive.
That's interesting. Most leadership books really emphasize optimism and the power of positive thinking. Why do you think Ben takes a different approach?
Well, he learned that shielding employees from the harsh realities doesn't really help anyone. In fact, it can actually erode trust and create a culture of uncertainty. Transparency, even when it's uncomfortable, builds a stronger foundation. He even developed a very specific, humane, and respectful method for layoffs, something he unfortunately had to do several times.
Yeah, that must have been incredibly difficult, both personally and professionally. How did he approach those situations?
He emphasizes taking ownership of a company's failures. He makes it clear that layoffs aren't about individual performance, but about the company falling short of its goals. It's about taking responsibility as a leader and being upfront with your team, even when it's painful. And he has equally strong opinions on how to fire an executive, which can be even more complex, especially when personal relationships are involved.
Oh, yeah. That's a situation most of us dread. What does Ben recommend?
He advocates for a clear, direct approach. Identify the root cause of the problem, have a plan in place for communicating the decision to the company, and treat the executive with respect throughout the process. Sometimes it even means demoting a loyal friend for the good of the company. It's about prioritizing the company's needs while still handling the situation with compassion.
That takes a lot of courage to separate the personal from the professional. He also talks about some of the lies that losers tell. What are those, and why does he call them out?
These are defense mechanisms that prevent people from taking responsibility for their actions and learning from their mistakes. Things like blaming external factors for their own failures or claiming they're not in it for the money. Ben encourages a culture of accountability where people own their shortcomings and strive to improve.
Right. It's about taking ownership and being honest with yourself, too. In that vein, he has a chapter called Nobody Cares. What's the message there?
It's a powerful reminder to focus on what you can control. He literally says, all the mental energy you use to elaborate your misery would be far better used trying to find the one seemingly impossible way out of your current mess. In the end, nobody cares. Just run your company.
It's a bit blunt, but I get it. It's about cutting through the noise and focusing on execution, delivering results. But it's not just about driving your team relentlessly. He also borrowed a great saying from his former boss, Jim Barksdale. Take care of the people, the products, and the profits in that order.
It highlights the importance of prioritizing people, creating great products, and then focusing on the bottom line. Ben stresses that a good place to work is one where people feel valued, respected, and empowered. It's not just about perks and benefits, but about building a culture of trust, transparency, and accountability.
He actually shared a story about confronting one of his managers who wasn't holding regular one-on-one meetings with their team. He was furious because he believed those meetings were crucial for building relationships and fostering open communication.
It definitely underscores his commitment to creating a culture of feedback and development. Managers have a responsibility to support their team's growth and provide regular guidance. And he's a huge advocate for training. He believes that even the smartest people need training to be effective in their roles.
Investing in your people is essential. He also talks about hiring people with the right kind of ambition. What does he mean by that?
He distinguishes between ambition for the company's success and ambition for the executive's personal success. The former is essential for building a strong team, while the latter can lead to destructive politics and a focus on individual gain at the expense of the company. He provides tips for screening for this during interviews, looking for clues in how candidates describe their past experiences and motivations.
It's not just about raw talent or ambition, but the direction of that ambition and how it aligns with the company's goals. It makes a lot of sense. He also delves into the complexities of titles and promotions, which can be a minefield in any organization.
He acknowledges the challenges of what he calls the law of crappy people, the idea that in any organization there's a certain percentage of people who are just not that good at their jobs. And as a company grows, it's important to have a clear and fair process for promotions based on merit, not politics. He contrasts Mark Andreessen's approach of giving out high titles freely to motivate people with Mark Zuckerberg's stricter leveling system, which emphasizes fairness.
It's interesting to see those two contrasting philosophies. Ben also stresses having a well-defined management process to minimize miscommunication and ensure everyone is on the same page.
He believes that a strong HR organization is key to making this happen. They can provide valuable insights into the entire employee life cycle, from recruiting and hiring to performance management and retention. He also has some great advice on giving feedback. Be clear, direct, and respectful. He even suggests using profanity strategically to make your message more impactful.
That's definitely not your typical HR advice. He's supposed to have a good story about that.
He does. He had to address concerns about excessive profanity at Opsware and ultimately decided to embrace it as part of their company culture.
I guess when in Rome, he also revisited the Freaky Friday management technique to resolve a conflict between two teams. It highlights his creativity and willingness to try unconventional solutions.
Yeah.
He also talks about one-on-one meetings and stresses they should be driven by the employee's agenda, not the manager's.
He even provides a list of thought-provoking questions managers can use to encourage open communication and gain valuable insights from their team members.
It's about truly listening to your team and understanding their needs and perspectives. He dedicates a whole chapter to company culture, emphasizing the importance of designing a culture that aligns with the company's values and goals.
He uses examples like Amazon's desks made out of doors and Facebook's $10 per minute fine for being late to meetings to illustrate how seemingly trivial cultural designing points can have a lasting impact on employee behavior.
It's about being intentional and creating an environment that reinforces the behaviors you want to see. Scaling the organization effectively is another key theme.
He argues that all organizational designs are inherently flawed, but provides a framework for creating a structure that optimizes communication and decision-making. He also stresses the importance of having well-defined processes to ensure information flows smoothly and tasks are completed efficiently as the company grows.
As the company grows, the processes need to grow with it. It can't just be a free-for-all. He also warns against what he calls the scale anticipation fallacy. What's that about?
It's the tendency to evaluate employees based on their perceived ability to scale in the future rather than their current performance. He argues that this approach is counterproductive because it prevents people from developing new skills and can lead to premature hiring decisions that ultimately hurt the company.
So focus on what people are doing now and how they're contributing to the company's success today, not on some hypothetical future potential. He also provides insights into the decision-making process, especially when it comes to tough choices like whether to sell the company.
He shares his experience grappling with the logical and emotional aspects of this decision, ultimately selling Opsware to HP for $16 billion. He explains that the decision to sell or stay independent should be based on a careful assessment of the market opportunity and the company's ability to become a leader in that market.
It's about making strategic decisions that are in the best interest of the company, even if they're difficult emotionally. He also discusses the challenges technical founders face when transitioning into the CEO role, which led him to co-found Andreessen Horowitz with Mark Andreessen.
They saw a gap in the market for a firm that truly understood the unique challenges of building a tech company from the ground up. They wanted to create a platform to empower those founders. And they weren't afraid to break from the traditional venture capital mold, using Mark's name recognition and embracing a more public-facing strategy.
It's a bold move, but it paid off. They've become one of the most successful venture capital firms in the world. And their approach to supporting their portfolio companies is modeled after the legendary Hollywood talent agency CAA, building a network of experts and resources to provide comprehensive support. He also shares some insightful tips for interviewing sales executives.
He emphasizes understanding their sales process training methods and ability to build and manage a high-performing team. He also suggests asking thought-provoking questions to assess their decision-making style, market knowledge, and overall approach to leadership. But it's not just about skills and experience.
It's about getting to know the person beyond their resume, understanding their motivations, values, and vision. You want to make sure they're a good fit for the company culture. And throughout the book, Ben shares personal anecdotes, candid observations, and practical advice that makes the hard thing about hard things a truly invaluable resource for anyone navigating the complexities of leadership.
Whether you're an entrepreneur, a CEO, or just someone looking to improve your leadership skills, this book offers a wealth of insights and practical guidance.
Speaking of insights, let's dive into one of the most interesting concepts in the book, the idea of peacetime CEO versus wartime CEO. What exactly is that about?
So Ben argues that different situations demand different leadership styles, you know?
Yeah.
A peacetime CEO focuses on building scalable systems, fostering a positive culture, and empowering employees. But when a company faces an existential threat, like a wartime CEO needs to take charge, make the tough calls, and prioritize survival above all else.
So it's like switching gears from steady growth and optimization to like crisis mode and rapid response.
Exactly. And he provides a whole list of contrasting characteristics between the two, highlighting how their approaches to decision-making, communication, and even delegation can be drastically different.
And it sounds like Ben had to switch between these modes several times while leading Loud Cloud and Opsware, right?
Absolutely. I mean, during the dot-com crash, he had to become a wartime CEO, making those difficult choices like layoffs and fighting tooth and nail to keep the company afloat. But once they stabilized, he shifted back to peacetime mode, rebuilding the company culture, empowering his team, and laying the foundation for long-term growth.
It's a delicate dance, knowing when to be the decisive general and when to step back and let the troops take charge.
Right. And it's not just about instinct. It's about having a deep understanding of the situation in your team and what the company needs at any given moment. And Ben also breaks down the essential skills of a CEO into two key areas, strategy and decision-making.
What does he say about those?
Well, he stresses that the CEO's job is to define the company's story. The why behind everything they do. This story provides context for employees, customers, investors, and the press, aligning everyone around a shared vision.
So it's not just about setting goals, but about creating a narrative that gives those goals meaning.
Exactly. And when it comes to decision-making, Ben emphasizes speed and quality. He argues that great CEOs make decisions quickly, even with incomplete information, and they have the courage to stand by those decisions even when they're unpopular.
He's not advocating for reckless decision-making, though, is he?
No. It's about calculated risk-taking and trusting your gut. He actually shares a really gripping story about a near-disastrous situation with their auditor, Ernst & Young, during the acquisition of Opsware by HP. And this incident really highlights the importance of integrity even when facing immense pressure.
It sounds like a real test of his leadership and his values.
Yeah.
How did he navigate that crisis?
Well, he had to balance satisfying the auditors with keeping the acquisition on track. It required strategic thinking, clear communication, and a firm commitment to ethical conduct. The story really underscores the importance of having a strong moral compass as a leader.
For sure. And Ben also dives into the concept of accountability, breaking it down into accountability for effort, promises, and results.
Yeah.
How does he differentiate between these?
He explains that while holding people accountable for their commitments is important, it's also crucial to encourage risk-taking and innovation, recognizing that not every effort will be successful.
So it's about celebrating the effort even when the outcome isn't what you hope for.
Right. It's about creating an environment where people feel safe to experiment and learn from their mistakes. And he also provides guidance on evaluating performance fairly, taking into account the complexity of the task, the level of risk involved, and the overall context of the situation.
It's a nuanced approach that recognizes that success isn't always linear and that failure can be a valuable learning experience.
Exactly. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the hard thing about hard things, what stands out to you as the most impactful takeaway for our listeners?
I think it's Ben's honesty about the messy realities of leadership. He doesn't sugarcoat the challenges, but he also shows us that it's possible to navigate them with integrity, resilience, and a commitment to building something great.
I agree. This book is a reminder that leadership isn't about having all the answers or always making the right decisions. It's about having the courage to face the tough choices, learn from your mistakes, and keep moving forward even when you're not sure where you're going.
It's about embracing the journey with all its ups and downs and building a company where people feel valued, respected, and empowered to do their best work.
Absolutely. If you're looking for a raw, honest, and insightful guide to leadership, entrepreneurship, and the challenges of building a company, The Hard Thing About Hard Things is a must-read. It will challenge you, inspire you, and leave you with a lot to think about long after you finish it.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Ben Horowitz's world. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible.